A horse hits 70, your ancestor never broke 25. So sit with that gap for a moment. The animal tears across the open grass, vanishing in seconds, a blur that every version of your great-grandfather could never come close to matching. He doesn't even bother trying. He just stands there and watches it disappear, and then he begins walking after it. Not sprinting, walking. By the time the sun touches the horizon, that animal is dead, and he hasn't broken a sweat. So how does the slowest predator on the entire savanna bring down the one creature designed to outrun everything, including him? It seems straightforward. The fast animal escapes. Except that's never how it played out. For the vast majority of your bloodline's existence on this earth, speed was the losing strategy, and your ancestors won by refusing to compete in it. When scientists Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman laid out the evidence in 2004, they pointed to something no other large predator on that plain could do. Something so unremarkable you did it walking to the kitchen this morning. The animal had hooves, claws, and 3 times the top speed. Your ancestor had one single advantage buried inside his own body, and it turned every fast, terrified, faster-than-you creature on that savanna into something he could chase straight into the ground. Picture a gazelle the moment it notices him, it explodes into motion. One heartbeat, it's grazing peacefully. The next, it's a streak of dust ripping across open terrain. 40 kilometers an hour and still climbing. Swallowed by the scrub before he's taken 3 steps. It got away. That's what your eyes tell you. And for about a minute, your eyes are correct. Because here's what that gazelle cannot do. It cannot cool itself while it moves. Every 4-legged animal on that plain sheds heat the same way, by standing still and panting, forcing warmth out through an open mouth. But it can't pant while it's galloping. The lungs and the legs are locked to the same rhythm, breath chained to stride, so the moment it sprints, the very system keeping it from cooking inside its own body shuts down entirely. The heat has no way out, it builds. A gazelle's core temperature can spike 4.5 degrees during a hard run, enough to push a body past the threshold where it simply stops functioning. So it has to halt, stand still, gasp the heat back out. And the instant it stops, the slow shape reappears on the horizon, still walking. Researchers continue to debate exactly how often this worked in practice, but the logic of it is impossible to outrun. The chase isn't a race. It's a slow execution wearing the costume of one. The animal burns through itself in furious bursts while your ancestor spends almost nothing, closing the distance one collapse at a time. Sprint, rest. Except each rest gets shorter, each sprint runs hotter until the heat finally wins. The gazelle isn't caught, it overheats, its own engine redlines until the body quietly shuts itself off. And it folds into the grass while the hunter covers the last few meters and ends it with a stone. No claws, no speed. Just a creature that couldn't be made to quit chasing one that couldn't keep going. But the slow walk was never the true weapon. The real weapon was something stranger, something happening behind the hunter's eyes the entire time. And this is where it turns strange. The gazelle is gone, over the ridge, out of sight. No dust still drifting in the air. By every rule of the hunt, the trail is dead. The hunter crouches low. In the dirt is a scuff no wider than your thumb, a blade of grass folded the wrong direction. A fleck of saliva still wet at the edge of a print. To you, it's nothing. To him, it's a complete sentence. And he reads it the way you're reading this line right now, left to right, effortlessly, with certainty. The animal went this way. It's weakening. It's favoring its left side. It paused here longer than the last time. He hasn't laid eyes on the gazelle since it vanished over the rise. He doesn't have to. He isn't chasing the animal. He's chasing the story the animal writes into the earth. This is the weapon, and it has nothing to do with his legs. It lives in whatever is doing the reading. Long before anyone scratched a word into stone or counted past 10, your ancestors were running the first science on Earth, gathering signs, constructing a theory, predicting where something they couldn't see would be, and testing it one footstep at a time. A wrong guess meant a cold trail and a hungry family. So the brains that guessed right are the ones that eventually became yours. And beneath that brain ran the engine that made everything possible. Your ancestor had shed nearly all his fur and grown millions of tiny outlets across his skin, each one weeping water to pull heat from the body as fast as it accumulated. A cooling system soaking his shirt at the gym today, running on nothing more than sweat and patience, while the animal he hunted had nothing but an open mouth and nowhere to send the heat. Bare skin. A million tiny valves. A brain that reads the dirt like a page. That body is still yours. But your ancestors didn't stop at turning themselves into the perfect hunter. They started turning the land itself into a weapon the animal could never read. And here's the part that changes everything. Picture a herd at full sprint, 100 animals flooding across open ground in a river of muscle, and on either side of them a low wall of stacked stone. They don't slow for it. Walls mean nothing to a running gazelle. It simply runs the channel between them, and the channel feels like open earth, like escape. Except the two walls are angling toward each other. A kilometer ahead, they nearly meet, where they converge. Hidden until the very last stride, the ground drops away into a pit deeper than a man standing upright. The herd doesn't stumble into a trap. It runs into a trap built before any of them drew their first breath. Across the deserts of the Middle East, archaeologists have uncovered more than 6,000 of these stone funnels, some with arms stretching for kilometers, etched into the landscape and visible today only from the air. When researcher Remy Krasser and his team confirmed what they were in 2022, the scale of it was staggering. These weren't pens or boundaries. They were killing machines drawn across entire valleys, engineered to consume a whole herd in a single afternoon. And they aren't even the oldest version. On an island off Japan, hunters carved rows of pits across a flat terrace and drove animals into them 30,000 years ago. A slaughter floor cut into the earth before the last ice age had even begun to release its grip. Think about what that means for the animal. It could outrun the man. It could never outrun the ground. By the time it was thundering down that stone corridor, the outcome had already been decided, settled years before by people who had studied how it moved, where it traveled, which direction it fled when frightened, and had quietly reshaped the landscape around that knowledge. The gazelle was fast, but it was running through a world that had been carefully rebuilt to catch it, by minds that had been reading its kind for 10,000 years before this particular animal ever took its first breath. Your body doesn't know the herds are gone. It doesn't know the stone traps have crumbled, that nothing waits to be run down anymore. It only knows the old arrangement, that it was made to sweat, to track, to keep moving long after everything else is forced to stop. Here's what nobody mentions when they imagine the caveman as the weakling of the animal kingdom. He wasn't slow because he lost the race. He was slow because he was never running the race the animal believed it was in. The gazelle overheating in the dust. The brain reading the story pressed into the dirt. The valley silently remade into a trap. They look like three separate things. They are one thing seen from three different depths. And here's the other part nobody talks about. The animal was always competing in the game it could see. Speed, distance, the next ridge. Your ancestors were playing a game it couldn't see at all, built from time and patience and the slow, quiet reshaping of the world around one single certainty. It will tire before we do, so picture it one last time. An animal at full stride across open ground, faster than anything your kind ever was. Every muscle straining toward the horizon and freedom. And somewhere far behind it, too distant to matter, a single figure walking, not rushing, not even paying that much attention, just moving. The way water moves toward the sea. The animal is running a race. It has always been running a race, against the next ridge, against the fire building inside its own chest. Your ancestors never entered that race. They were the patience the race was run against. And patience, in the end, catches everything that runs.